On today's episode of The Dead Life, I want to take a look at the energy that's been holding us back, making many sensitives feel off their game. Mercury Retrograde has just shifted direct after 3 long weeks of electronic glitches, miscommunication, and feeling pushed backwards. This cycle of Mercury Retrograde claimed 2 cell phones and 1 laptop in our household. With 5 planets still retrograde, how might the next couple of months look? Tom McMullan, our resident astrologer, is here with me to fill us in. You can find me on Instagram at Medium Allison. You can follow me on my Facebook fan page, and you can binge on my YouTube videos. You can also see me live on October 15th in Chicago, Illinois, on October 29th in Irvine, California, and November 12th in Denver, Colorado. Come spend a Saturday afternoon with me, bringing through loved ones who have messages for my audience. For ticket information, go to AllisonDubois.com. Tom, welcome back.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
So I got to tell you, I'm on social media with a lot of sensitives, and I hear just from people that are friends of how they've been feeling. And Mercury retrograde was particularly hard for me anyways this year.
Right.
Why might the listeners be experiencing this energy zap of things not working out for them? Because it seems that everything that should go right goes wrong.
Well, we're under a large stress point that's been going on for a couple of years anyway. But, I didn't have the same problems that you did with the Mercury retrograde because I was born with Mercury retrograde. So,
that's why you had a problem today when it went direct.
Yeah, it went direct. My power went out in my house. So,
oh my God.
Is that funny? Yeah,
clockwork.
Yeah, it caught up to me. So anyway, and Mercury does screw up communications. It screws up technology. It's the usual things. Usually delays. Flight delays, airlines, things like that. And, so it's over and we move forward now. Mercury has moved back into Virgo briefly, and then it will go for the rest of the month into Libra.
Wow.
And so we go back to what we're calling sort of social issues and things like that, which we'll talk about.
And Mercury's communication, for people that don't maybe know what Mercury signifies.
It rules 2 signs. It rules communication and social issues with Libra. And then it rules Virgo, which is technology and keeping things in order and categorizing, things like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You broke it down.
Yeah.
I like it. So it was interesting because your Mercury retrograde, right? Joe's Mercury retrograde.
Right.
In Mercury retrograde, when my phone went out, it also was the anniversary of my dad's passing.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm having this hard day, and my Joe, who I know loves me intensely, accidentally shut off my phone that I had just gotten 2 days before, and it happened to just get shut off on the day my dad died. And so I couldn't talk to anybody. And I was just like, stop touching things right now.
Spirit's messing with you, Allison.
Yeah, probably telling me to take it easy. So
yeah.
I just thought it was funny. I had to share it. So what can people expect coming up? Because I know retrograde planets, they have pros and cons, but we only really hear about the cons.
Well, I want to explain retrograde because we have like 8 planets in retrograde. So, and they're all the outer ones and some of the inner, but all the outer planets, and I think I said this before in a podcast, represent the big issues going around the world for all of us. So they're, larger collectives. We're going to ignore Pluto and Neptune because Pluto's half the year in retrograde, and then Neptune's not far behind that. But there are 2 outer planets that are in a fight with each other right now, and they're both retrograde. And they're the planet Uranus and the planet Saturn.
Okay.
Now, understand that Saturn represents our rules and regulations and things, our governments and things that restrict us in our life. And Saturn ruled Aquarius until the late 18th century. And then Uranus was discovered, and then it changed the dynamic of the rules because Aquarius means freedom to choose your own path.
We're freedom-loving fools.
And that was the creation of this country. Okay. Our entire Constitution and Declaration of Independence was a new government in the world that represented a democratic republic where we had freedoms to choose individual choices outside of the government.
Right.
Okay. So this was the birth of that consciousness. Now, you're an Aquarian. So understand Aquarian energy. They love humanity, but they don't like people.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, and the point of that is you want to belong, but in some way or fraction, you feel like you never do for some reason.
Right.
Because there's an inner part of you that needs to rebel. And then when you rebel, you feel alone. And so when an Aquarian gets older, they start accepting the fact, I just am going to be alone, or I'm going to do it my way. And if you're extreme rebel, then you disrupt the system.
Okay.
Or you disrupt your life by separating yourself from it. That's why Aquarians want to go off into the, somewhere, which I just posted on Instagram, someone standing looking at the stars forever.
Right,
and that's
right.
how they feel in their life. It's like, I'm all alone in the universe sometimes.
Yeah.
So, that's the Aquarian energy. Now, Saturn represents the powers we give to constrict us that we need so we don't float off into space, essentially.
Okay.
So we have a system work in. It's kind of like a Pisces energy, which is water to form. This is sort of consciousness to the collective unconscious of what we're told we can or cannot do.
Right.
So we have these government shifts going on right now because those two planets that rule Capricorn and Aquarius are fighting each other, trying to break the mold of how it's always been. And this started it started when Pluto and Saturn were conjunct. And so now it's just these two planets are in a war to who's going to win.
Right.
The power we give our government to restrict our freedom, or that we rebel against it and create our new rules, because it's going through a massive change. Change means resistance. We're naturally resistant to change because we don't know the outcome to it.
Sure.
But the planets and the energy are pulling it towards us anyway. We have no choice in this. It's a collective energy. And so we're seeing these regime changes around the world from autocracy versus democracies.
Right.
And so it's interesting, even this last week, Italy turned over to more of a dictatorial dynamic when they elected the new head of Italy.
Wow.
And today there's actually a election in Brazil between an autocrat and a Democrat. So a democracy versus an autocracy.
Right.
And the results won't be until tomorrow.
Because Brazil's sort of run by the people who are wealthy own all the media outlets there, so they control the news.
Right. And that's the other part I'll start about in a minute, which is information, because we're going to talk about that. But it's important to know that we keep getting this message, what do you want your country to be? And we see a great division in our own country.
Yes.
And what I want to address is turn everybody else's messages off, because there's another aspect going on that is in a retrograde that's making us look at it differently than we would if we gave power to someone else. And that is Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter is retrograde in Aries. And Jupiter represents our belief systems and our values. What are your belief systems and your values? What do you want? Not what people tell you you're going to get or not get.
Right.
It's because we're going through an identity crisis.
Yes.
Has to do with time, open borders, mixing cultures.
Right.
So all our politics have become identity and cultural issues. And they've moved away from policies and things in the everyday life. It's more about, I want this in my life and you're trying to take it away. These people are invading my life, my borders. There's a lot of fear around that worldwide.
Absolutely.
So, and again, I was doing this research, and it just dawned on me that there's something repeating itself that goes back to the creation of this country. Because I said 200 and some odd years ago was the beginning of birth of a new system of this concept. And it's Russia versus Ukraine. Because Putin's sort of an autocrat who wants to go back to the sovereignty of Russia and bring back all his Russian empire by invades Ukraine. And then Ukraine says, oh no, we don't want to go back to you. So it's like a revolutionary war for Ukraine.
So this is interesting because I see the back and forth amongst those countries, but if there is Aquarian influence that we're experiencing, doesn't that make people a little more isolationist?
Yes.
And countries want their strong borders, and they, so I think that says a lot about how voting may go in November as well, because people are tired of it. They're just tired of it.
Again, people are in different camps. And so we have this R and this D in two camps. Then we have sections of the country that represent those camps. So once again, the Aquarian energy is those who want to belong in their camp that agree with them. And then the other side wants to agree with them.
Right.
And here comes the media. They're only pandering that.
The media is just horrible.
So it's not, that's why I say you've got to sit down with yourself.
Right.
And say, what do you want the government to represent for you? And who do you?
And over the last couple of years, we got to a point where we're like, we don't trust anything they're saying in the media.
Right.
We don't like what Hollywood's doing. Everything's just sort of up in the air in division. And so this is the culmination of it.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But see, again, I was going to talk about the media because, Mars is in Gemini. So the war is war of the words.
Sure.
And since we have a media platform in our country that represents what do you want us to tell you that you want us to hear? So the people are giving them their information, whether it's real or not, whether it's on social media or it's an actual, news profile.
Right.
But it's like it's all coming at us and it's overwhelming.
Yes.
So, and it is all about fear. The messages are fear. How many media outlets do you listen to that have messages of hope?
Yeah, it's pretty bleak right now.
Yeah, it's not. It's because they make money from, shock value.
Even our government, though, we were all in lockdown with COVID, and then what happens? Murder beetle. Yeah. What happened to the murder beetle?
Right.
You don't hear anything about that now. Why are they trying to give us anxiety attacks and literally kill us with stress? It's like, stop it.
I don't want to downplay the hurricane in Florida, but it was 2 solid days of nothing but the hurricane in Florida because it's sensational.
Right.
Okay, so people are drawn to sensational or we wouldn't slow down in a car accident that we just drove by.
True.
And that's kind of the consciousness. And I want people to turn all that off because we have a massive election coming up in a very tense situation that we have to look inward. And so when you say, and when we talk about value is a survival instinct because it's essentially money. So our value
it's all about greed. This is all about
it's
greed.
money. And so the planet Uranus, which is in a fight with Capricorn, is in Taurus. So it's our values need to be reevaluated and possibly changed.
Sure.
How much money or how much power through it, all these things, because the few control the masses through money now.
Yes.
And so that becomes a conflict and a revolution itself. And so those that are the have-nots, looking at those who have the haves, and the ones that haves are the ones that, control the have-nots.
Right.
so it is. It's
and that's not the way it's supposed to be in our country.
No.
And how did it get so, I'm sure there's many reasons why it got so lopsided. But
because of the resistance of Saturn and Capricorn, it wants to hold us back. And so I'm going to go back to what created this country to begin with 240 years ago.
Okay.
Was that it was the Piscean age in its culmination, and it's when the few control the masses through religion. And so that was the power of the time. And that's when the United States happened, America happened, when we broke away from the monarchy and the rule of England.
Because we didn't want a tea tax.
Yes, money.
Look at us now.
Right.
A lot of taxes.
But you see my point?
Yes.
So this is the same thing.
Right.
Again.
Yes.
But it's money, not dogma.
Right.
Maybe dogma's mixed in certain cultures, obviously, because it's still there. But not where we're looking at, how do I survive with my resources?
Right.
And so that has a lot to do with it. And then since Uranus is in Taurus and it also rules the Earth, now we see these massive shifts of Earth patterns that we did in the 30s when it was there before. So, all these things are kind of happening at once and they're all disastrous, essentially.
Right.
So it's a self-evaluation because retrograde means to turn into you and away from the external.
Right.
And so you look at your own beliefs, whether it's your religion, your spirituality, your resources, whatever it is, how are you giving that power away to somebody or how are you managing through you?
Right.
So, and again, how do you go back into a government that says this is what we'll let you do and what you don't do, and it's become extreme. But,
and their hands in your pockets, grabbing your wallet constantly.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of, and I don't like Mars and Gemini for 7 months because that's where it's going to be for so long. So it's just so much noise.
Yeah.
And you have to get away from sensational and fear and manipulation through fear.
Sure.
Because that's always how it controls the masses, because it did that through Dogma for so long too, essentially. So,
look at all the ads running right now for elections.
Oh, it's horrible.
And it's terrible. And a lot of people don't know what to believe, or they just keep voting with the same party. And it'd be great if they could actually read what the propositions are, you know, what's at stake, and just make a conscious choice of what feels right to them. Without things being spun. There's a lot of spin doctors out there. They'll take something bad and make it sound like it's an amazing thing. You know, we're going to give you tax relief. And it's like, yeah, that's our money, you know, and then they'll take something good, good, and destroy it. When things start getting good again and we're all happy, then something bad comes out again. Yeah. We have murder beetles and monkeypox, and we had COVID. It's like, can we get a break already? Yeah. So, yeah. And then the queen died, Sherry, right? She's good.
Well, and again, that's not surprising either, because the regime change of England now is how strong the monarchy will be or won't be without her, because she held on to that position. She
held it together,
and she's gone now. And Charles doesn't really have much interest at all. So,
he's not really kingly.
No, he's not, and it won't last long anyway. But so that alone is another signature or symbol of where we are right now. It's like, now what happens?
Okay, so that's what you're saying. We don't know what our identity is. England doesn't know what their identity is. Yeah. Each country's trying to figure out their own personal identity, what their energy will be.
And then Russia is having an identity crisis because they all thought, this was something it wasn't, and now they're finding out they're not doing so well.
They can't get soldiers because they won't fight.
No, that's so new for a Russian army to be bailing from their country.
Yeah, they're like, we don't believe in this. We're not fighting for it.
And that's my point. What's your belief? What are you fighting for? You see?
Good example, yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So here we are around the world going through this all together. It is a turning point in history that will always be remembered years from now, because it's like the creation of any kind of new government, any kind of new system in any part of the world. And so, and they are very different when you go from North Korea to China to Iran, or, the old ways, and then to the new ones. And that's why you see the difference between, I want to be a part of NATO. We don't want to have anything to do with NATO. It's like, we don't want to be in your camp. We don't want you to be controlling our camp.
Yes.
So that's what's going on.
I see. Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So, is there anything else? So I had a question for you regarding the planets, and I'm just asking this as a layman, because I think a lot of people out there listening, obviously you've been doing this for 30 something years.
Yes.
You're a pro, you know what you're doing. Some of us are listening to you to try and understand astrology better. So for instance, if a child was born with 6 planets retrograde, say a child was born last week when there were six planets that I knew of that were retrograde. So that's not the external, it was more of the internal. What would that person's energy be like? What are people like that have a bunch of planets retrograde?
Well, it's more, like you said, internal. So it'd be more introverted in its own ways, and where they are. It depends on what they are and where they are, because it isn't just the sign the planets are in, but where they are in the houses of the chart.
Okay.
Because that's where it plays out.
Sure.
So, and it's interesting because I have Mercury retrograde in Libra in the 3rd house of communication.
Okay.
So essentially, for me, it's like I'm more right brain than left brain.
Yeah.
So I feel and envision more than I analyze.
Do you have to choose your words more carefully to not like trip over your tongue?
When I was younger,
okay.
Yes. When I was younger, it took me a long time to comprehend reading. It was like a different language to me.
Yes.
And so because I see in visual and pictures, English, our words have specific meaning. And so I'm looking at letters and in sentences, and I don't know what I'm looking at. And that's why I like astrology, because astrology is told in symbols. Symbols create images and feelings. If you look at Asian language, it's the same thing. So that's how I was drawn to this, because it was a language that was easy.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily screwed if they're born with 6 planets retrograde.
Well,
okay.
you're gonna have somebody much more active in their life when there's nothing retrograde, or very little. Usually there's something, but it's the inner planets for the most part, because they go retrograde more often. Mercury being the most obvious.
So Mercury going direct, that's a big deal. And then there's another planet going direct at the end of this month, I believe.
Yes. Let me find my notes here.
That's fine. Take your time.
Wrote that down.
I'll entertain our audience.
Saturn goes direct on the 23rd of October.
Okay.
So Saturn goes out of its retrograde in Aquarius, now goes forward, which means it's we go pushing toward that conflict instead of,
But we have to.
We have to.
The conflict has to happen.
And it's going to on November 8th in our own country. So, yeah. And because I said before in a podcast that we have all these fixed, signs in this process, it's going to be very difficult, challenging.
I think it's going to be kind of ugly.
I think so.
I think gloves are going to come off and everybody's going to try and put their shoulder into it and win at any means necessary. So I think you're going to see some ugliness occurring, and we'll also be in a sun in Scorpio, which is secrets. It can be lies, retaliation.
Right.
That's going to add some intensity. So it's like throwing gasoline on
Well,
the fire.
you're probably going to see a lot of the, it's rigged. It's not, the
Well,
boats.
it could be. I mean, we've seen some things.
Yeah.
We don't know. That's the problem. We don't
it.
know.
But that narrative will probably increase.
Right.
Because even in the primaries, it was still playing out. So.
Well, even they were trying to recall a California attorney general or somebody like that. And he's like, oh, no, there was... they were messing with the tampering with the ballots or something, and he was saying you couldn't read the cursive signatures, and so they just threw it out and just ignored it. And he just stayed in office. I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
So how do we get an honest set of politicians in this time?
Well, that's why we're voting.
Right. I know, but I don't know if there are any. I'm a little worried. Oh, God.
And I also wanted to bring up, because Uranus being in Taurus, ruling money, we are watching, that has a lot to do with inflation now. So we had a swing up and now a real strong swing down. And then, there's a lot of factors in that.
It's going to stay down. This is
for a while.
changing.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's going to be down for a while because there's so many factors that got it there.
Yeah.
And again, until the politics gets figured out, we know. But inflation is an issue. But as I always said, everything cycles. It won't stay down permanently.
Well, sure. I mean, that's kind of with anything, they seem to go in cycles, but it still hurts while you're going through it.
But people they look at their immediate environment in the present. Mm-hmm. And so I always feel like, don't vote your immediate environment, because politics never looks at long range views. It's like how they manipulate you and how you feel today.
Yes.
So you have to know that you're going to vote for larger issues than what's happening today.
I think people do that. I think they pick their pony basically, and they'll say, and I don't want to give too specific of an example, but because I don't want to offend a bunch of people, because God knows I'm good at it. But I think sometimes if you're worried about your children and you they'll say, I'm going to vote for more money in the schools, but then the money never makes it to the children because the bureaucrats absorb it. Yeah. So if they vote for children in that bill, whatever it is, or a proposition, it doesn't necessarily change anything. So you have to look at what can actually make a difference.
Right.
To what matters to you, what can actually be done. Well,
and again, there's arguments on both sides of everything. And, I want to address that because, Mercury being in Libra, and this can be a very strong Libra month, by the way. And so therefore, rather than get into these arguments back and forth, it's another thing that, Jupiter represents, which is, it's a very competitive energy because Sagittarius rules it. And so when we look at competition in sports, what we're not doing right now in our arguments and our needing to win our battles is because at the end of the day, we're not walking off the field going, okay, we'll let you have this. You had the better game. Shake hands,
right.
And accept defeat. We can't seem to accept defeat when we've been, defeated, which is what's happening in
unfortunately,
elections.
But that's on both sides.
No, exactly.
It's just unbelievable.
I'm not picking sides.
So with that, how can we move forward if that's the energy?
Yeah, well, that's up to us. I was very athletic in my life, and tennis is what I picked. And I didn't play tennis. I am competitive, but only with myself.
Right.
And if you see, now we'll go to a team, Aquarian, a team, if you, because today's football Sunday, so I'll bring that up. When the guys get interviewed after a game or a loss, they say, it's on me. They don't blame, and those that blame others, that's not good in sports. But they say, it's on me. I could have played better. We all could have played better.
Good sportsmanship, sure.
We're not good sportsmen right now. And that's what I'm trying to
I don't think anybody in the world is. I don't know what happened in like 30 years.
Yeah.
Everything just flipped over. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, well, and again, I think it's because we have generations behind us that say everybody wins, no one loses.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a psychological issue I have a problem with. But at the same time, if I'm going to look at this month and we have all this Libra energy, the point is to how do we both win? And which creates more of a compromise.
Diplomacy.
Yes. And it's not a personal threat to your survival. And it's not a personal threat to your life. It shouldn't be. And if it is, that's a problem.
Right.
But the Sun and Venus are conjunct all through this month for the most part, which is just Libra extraordinaire. So I bring that up because it's in my forecast that I just wrote, for this month.
And TomMcMullan.com, right?
Yeah, TomMcMullan.com.
Yeah.
And it's fun because this is the month of dating and socializing and getting out there. And so it could be a distraction to sort of like, let's go get our friends together, have fun. And on top of that, we have, Mars will be in Gemini making a favorable aspect to that. So it's very social.
Oh, good.
And it's very fun and it's dating. If you're going to want to go out there and find somebody, this is a great month to go out, dating. And so it will start relationships and it may be the beginning of ending relationships. So ones that aren't. And so on the 25th, the Sun and Venus both together move into Scorpio. And then we have an eclipse on that same day, which means that if you're in a relationship that was about to end, it's ending. And
I'm seeing that with people right now. I'm seeing them end.
And if you've been sort of dating for the month and it gets serious, now you get serious.
Wow.
Because that's a Scorpio energy. It's like all or nothing. It's like I don't want to be in this at all, or I'm going to be all the way in. So
it's a good time to go out there and get lucky and roll the dice on love.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Libra tends to be, I like Libra. It is a charming, eloquent energy where people start looking at an aesthetic and wanting to look better or decorate their home. And so I find it an appealing energy. The only part of it that's, I think, can be a good or bad, but the bad's not good, is the law aspect of Libra, legal issues. A lot of people are going to have legal issues in that 4 weeks. And well, with Jupiter and Aries also, because Jupiter is law also along with Libra. Okay.
They're sort of co-rulers of that consciousness. So, and again, Libra is righteousness and fairness, which is what the law is trying to accomplish, which what we try to accomplish in our relationships.
But see, that's just it, is the law trying to accomplish that. We don't know who to trust. Well, it's just a weird time.
Well, that now sounds like a Scorpio statement, who to trust.
Well, it's true, because you see some corruption in government.
Absolutely.
And that includes DAs and people who look the other way and don't prosecute the criminals and let them back out, and they hurt more people. I mean, it's a problem. Yep. So this all comes to a head now. Is that that's what you're seeing in the planets?
Definitely.
See, I actually like hearing that because I would like to see it come to a head. I want to see somebody held responsible or take responsibility for it and also end it. Yeah. Just end it. It's ugly. Yeah. It's been a long few years.
Yeah. Well, we've got to call out the lies and the deception and expose it at some point. Which is in process in a lot of different areas around the world also. But I do want to say this. This is fun. You'll like this. Because, as you said, Mercury went direct today. And unfortunately, the minute it did, it opposed Neptune. So so for the first sort of week of October, please, you will feel confused. I actually wrote this in the forecast. It's like waking up with a hangover the next day. Like, I don't even know how to function right now.
Well, maybe people should invest in a hangover then and just ride it out.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So don't make any decisions this week, serious ones.
Yeah.
Until your mind clears, and, and then also be very careful of people deceiving you, as we're talking deception, because Mercury with Neptune can be very deceptive.
Oh.
It's not as necessarily, I won't call it dishonest. I call it more deceptive, trying to manipulate, for their own sake.
Yeah.
So be careful signing papers if you're signing documents and things like that. Make sure that it's not a thing, because we talked about, you and I, about signing documents with Mercury retrograde.
Right.
I don't think that's a problem. I just don't.
But you are Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
So to you, you are familiar and comfortable with that energy. People born with Mercury direct aren't comfortable with that energy when it comes along. So for me, I'd rather not sign, but I did this cycle just because I heard you in my head. Yeah. And the stakes weren't high.
No.
So
well, that's the point. The stakes aren't that high. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So deception, expect deception this week. Just look for it. Doesn't mean it happens, but be aware.
Right.
And you're going to feel like you woke up with a hangover every day for about a week because of this aspect. So I say, give into that social nature of Libra, and you might as well create some memories with people you care about.
Well, it goes into Libra.
It's going to hurt anyways.
It goes into Libra on October 11th. So by the 11th, we'll be clear-headed and ready to party.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, gosh, is there anything else you think we should know, or that's pretty covers it all?
My favorite day of the month is actually the 19th, which is because it's my birthday.
Of course. Of course.
I love October.
It's all his sign is Libra, is Tom owned.
Oh yeah, all the way.
The whole month of October.
It's mine, people.
But we all feel that way when our birthday comes around. We're like, it's my month for sure. So, well, Tom, you're a wealth of information as usual. Thank you for being here. Your social media platforms, where can people find you? Yeah, well, I'm on Instagram. I'm working it out now. So what's your Instagram address? At Tom McMullan, or? It's Astrologer _ Tom. Okay. At Astrologist _ Tom. At Astrologist _ Tom. Yeah. Go follow Tom. We're trying to get him engaged in Instagram more. And he's trying. Yes. He's trying. So that sounds great. And TomMcMullan.com for booking information or to also see your astrological monthly forecast. Absolutely. Fantastic. Okay. Well, I'll be seeing you actually in 2 weeks. We're going to do this again. So thank you to you. Thank you to my listeners for joining us every week on The Dead Life. For the month of October, I'll be having Tom McMullan and Margaret Jameson on to talk about serial killers, witches, and Halloween. I'm Allison Dubois. This is The Dead Life. To all of my believers out there, don't stop believing.